Hi everybody. You're pretty much all seated, but anyway, welcome to Question Time. I'm Khadija, the chair of the Youth Council. I'm just going to let you all know that this event is actually being streamed live on the internet at the moment, but you don't have to worry about anything. We've also kind of got to say that in the extremely unlikely event of a fire, the fire exits are at the back there and there, right next to that table on the right. But, oh God, I sounded like an air hostess then. But yeah, so earlier this month we made a poll, and that poll was basically asking 11 to 18-year-olds what they thought the main issues were for Surrey Heath, in Surrey Heath. So you should have those sheets in the middle of your table if you would like to just have a quick look to prompt you for any ideas. Just to say, if anybody in the audience and in the panel members would like to speak, they absolutely must have a microphone with them, otherwise it won't be picked up on the live stream. Just reminding you that questions should be asked broadly and not to a specific party or person, and it should be aimed at tackling the issue. Disagreeing is absolutely fine, but if we could maybe keep things quite polite and quite friendly, then that would be really good for everybody. And lastly, before I hand you over to our question masters, can I just thank all of you for coming here today, and as well as the amazing candidates, and Paul Deach and James Stark. Thank you very much for our media. I'm now going to introduce you to our question masters. Thank you.
Hello, I am Bradley Hawkins.
Hello, I'm Jonathan Quinn.
I'm just going to run through the rules for tonight, which consist of each candidate has 1 minute in their debate to express what they want to say, and then it is open to debate for 3 minutes.
Now the first question we're going to ask is going to be quite a silly and introductory question, so the candidates get to know what the format of the evening is going to be like. And we're going to ask the candidates to state their name, tell us a bit about their party, or who they're standing for, but also describe to us what their favourite biscuit is. Now we're going to pick on a random candidate to ask, or to answer the question first, and that candidate is going to be Kimberly Lawson of the Green Party.
Hi, my name's Kimberly. I'm the Green Party candidate. The Green Party is all about social justice and equality for everybody. We want to end austerity. It's failed and it's just punishing the people that don't have enough. And we want to take care of the environment. This is a real issue. Climate change is a genuine threat. There is no doubt. And we need to do something about it. My favourite biscuit is one that I make myself quite often at home, and it's a River Cottage recipe, and it's got chunks of chocolate in, like a big gooey American style cookie, and it's that big, just enough for a big cup of tea.
Right, thank you. Brad, do you want to announce the second candidate?
So if we go with the Christian Party next.
Good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see all you young people here, because at the last meeting we had, everybody was saying that the young people don't know anything about politics and it should be taught in school. So I'm really delighted to see all you children here. Oh, I better not say children and upset them. All you youth and young people here today, and some adults also. My name is Juliana Brimicum, and I'm representing the Christian Party proclaiming Christ's Lordship. I'm a retired nurse, and I worked at Finley Park as a ward sister for many years. And my beef really is health and social care. The fact that people are given a very limited amount of time to be cared for, and sisters, husbands, uncles, whoever deemed to be the carer is expected to look after people at short notice with no training whatsoever to move and handle people. And that's my beef. And on top of that, I'm here to proclaim the values, the Christian and British values. We want that to be looked at again, because seeing that this is a Christian country, we should really look after. Oh, my time's up. I do apologize. Cream crackers.
All right, thank you. And our next candidate speaking will be Paul Chapman of the UKIP party.
Thank you. My name's Paul Chapman and I'm representing the UK Independence Party. As many of you will know, our main aim is to get a referendum and leave the European Union so that the UK can stand as an entity in its own right in the world and get out and trade and interact with the rest of the world rather than give away our sovereignty to Brussels. I live in Frimley Green. I've lived there for the last 9 years. We've lived in the area, my wife and daughter and I, for nearly 20 years. My daughter went to Sandringham School, Frimley C of E and Collingwood, and she's at university now. So some very good schools in the area. Favourite biscuit? Custard cream, I think, is my favourite biscuit. Fairly simple and straightforward, but it goes fantastic with a nice cup of strong tea, which is my favourite drink. So I'd like to thank you all for coming tonight and hope you enjoy the show.
So next we have the Labour Party.
So my name is Lowena Troshi. I'm standing for the Labour Party. I stand for social justice, equal opportunities and fairness for all. That's our party's core values. My favourite biscuit, I think by now all our mouths are watering with Kimberly's description, but I think mine would be Oreos. Thank you.
Our next candidate speaking will be Bob and Roberta Smith, an independent.
Hello, I'm Bob and Roberta Smith, and I am an artist, and I'm standing in this election. My inspiration really is Michael Gove, who you may realise is not here this evening, but Michael Gove is my inspiration. He's my inspiration because he has cut the arts in schools, and I'm very worried about that. I'm deeply concerned about that because your generation, you could participate in an economy which is worth 77 billion to the country, but the government doesn't realise that. And so I'm standing for the arts to try and promote the idea that we ought to have arts in our schools. They ought to be central to our children's learning. I'm sure many of you, enjoy the arts. Perhaps some of you slightly dismayed by the idea of studying art. But if everything is made, everything is designed. This microphone, this table, even my mad jacket has been designed by somebody, and that started with a pencil and a paper, a piece of pencil and paper. And rather sadly, I am gluten-free, so wheat biscuits are out of bounds for me. I want to hear a big ah.
But you like a macaroon.
I like a macaroon. I do like it.
So next up we'll have the Liberal Democrats.
Hello, good evening. I'm Marie Barker. I'm the Liberal Democrat candidate. My favourite biscuit is a jammy dodger because it's got the combination of biscuit, jam and cream. So three good for one. Three good things I'd like to highlight for you about the Liberal Democrats are the environment, education and equality. Liberal Democrats have put a great deal into education in the last Parliament. The pupil premium has been given throughout schools to help children who need that little extra help do better in schools. And there have been some recent reports that show that that's actually worked very well and helped to bring children up and make them achieve the very best that they can in education. On equality, we've managed to move that forward in this Parliament as well with equal marriage, and we do believe in equality for all across the board. And on the environment, we've also made some great achievements as well. We've been able to increase the amount of energy generated by renewable energy in this Parliament too.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you. And the last candidate, will be Oliver Lewis of the Conservative Party.
Right, good evening, everyone. My name's Oliver. I'm standing as a candidate in Frimley Green, and I'm standing on behalf of the Conservative Party. I suppose it sounds cheesy, but what we believe in is you. We believe in having a strong economy, which means that actually we've got to give people opportunities. So what we stand for is a strong education system, making sure that you can study at really great schools, come out with amazing skills. We believe in more kids going to top quality universities, having great apprenticeships, and also having an economy which is growing. We want more jobs, we want more businesses being set up all over the country. So that's what I want to advertise today. As for myself, I've lived here all my life. I now work up in London, but I do still live here. And I think my favourite biscuit would have to be one of those pink wafer biscuits. I mean, a little bit cheap, but they are incredibly delicious. But I feel a bit guilty eating them because they are the wrong colour for me.
Thank you, candidates. So we won't open the biscuit up to debate for the 3 minutes. So to get cracking in, really, we have our first question, which is work experience within schools is quite important, but people are concerned that they can't get good work experience because of like laws. But how would you show the businesses they can still employ young people?
The first candidate to respond to young people's employment will be the Liberal Democrat Party.
Thank you. I think work experience in education is very important, and as an employer or someone involved in a business, I've always been very keen to give young people opportunities to come in and see how the business works. I think a lot of it's to do with information. Some businesses get very afraid and think there is just too much red tape, too many forms to fill in to have a young person come and spend some time on work experience. Now, obviously, there are things to be done, but it really isn't that onerous. I've seen them, I fill the forms in, it's not that difficult. So information is really important. And I think the schools should be going out there and having a good relationship with their businesses. I think schools in the area do that, but there's probably more to be done to find out which businesses are in the area, which businesses can take young people and make sure that they're engaged and keeping up a relationship so they can do the same thing. Because once you've had young people in once, it's very easy to get them in again and again as they move through the school.
Thank you. So next up, we'll have the Labour Party.
Yes, the youth are very important, and I think we need to recognise this. I mean, I'm 25 years old. I joined the Labour Party when I was 14. But in terms of employment, you know, having the youth in terms of work experience, it's so important to have programmes in place. I mean, before I decided what I wanted to do in university, I shadowed different things, so you know, within different specialties, and then I fell in health. It's important that also if you do end up working as an intern, that you're not, you know, if you work, say, more than a certain period, you're actually paid at least the minimum wage, because that's another challenge that's currently happening. You get a role as an intern, you work more than 4 weeks, and you don't get paid. So we need to make sure that you get paid. We need to also make sure that there's a national minimum wage, an affordable minimum wage. I mean, the Labour Party proudly introduced the minimum wage, but we're saying that we're now going to increase the minimum wage to at least £8 an hour. So it's having these mechanisms in place as well that's important.
Thank you.
The next candidate speaking will be, well, from the Christian Party.
Yes, I do believe that children, I keep saying children, I do apologize, that children who's left school should be given the opportunity to have a look at the job that they want to do before they make their minds up. I know that they've got these options and they've got to do this, that, and the other at the given time, but it's important that they shouldn't be rushed into these options before they make their mind up. Now, if anyone wanted to go into health and social care, it would be a bit difficult for them to go and have work experience in that sphere, only because of the dignity issue. Because if you're looking after elderly people, or anybody for that matter, and young youth go out to do job experience, then it would not be very easy for them, I don't think, because I started very young myself. And if you're going out to a health and social care agency or to work in the community or care home or whatever, then you have to think about it very much. And on top of that, we've got all of the CQC involvement when you're working in the care setting. So I don't know how the youth will come under that. Yep.
Thank you for that. So next up, we'll have the Green Party.
I think one of the most important things about education is we need to recognise that everybody is different. Our current education system is very focused on testing, exams, league tables, and really kind of making school into a bit of a sausage factory. But do you know what? You guys are not sausages. And so that being the case, I think it's very important to recognise that because you're all different, all going to have different interests, going to have different ideas, whether you want to go to university, whether you want to go out into the workplace, and all of those options need to be available to you. So we absolutely would offer what we're calling green workforce training and an environmental community programme, which would include training courses for jobs in energy conservation and renewable energy, which are obviously very important aspects going forward of our environmental policy. And we'd also invest in creating training places and offering opportunities to unemployed people, particularly the young. Currently, young people are lots of unemployed young people.
Our next candidate speaking will be Oliver Lewis of the Conservative Party.
Thanks very much. Well, I completely agree that work experience is incredibly important. 10 years ago, I was at Tomlin's Co and I had some fantastic chances to go into work experience and learn some important skills. I think that we need to build on what we have. I think we need to have better outreach with companies. And one of the things that this government has done is introduce new types of schools called academies and free schools, which basically have a lot more freedom. So teachers can build better links with companies in the local area. They can help to create more internships and outreach and things like that. A related note, what we've also done is we've helped to encourage a lot more apprenticeships. We had 200,000 more apprenticeships in this last parliament. And we've also introduced a national citizenship service, which is something that helps build up skills in young people. So I completely believe in it and we're investing in it.
Thank you. So next up, we'll have the UKIP party.
Like everybody else has said, work experience is really important. It gives you a good taster for what's going on. Anne-Marie mentioned a little bit about the laws. Sometimes the laws are a bit prohibitive and fears about health and safety and that sort of thing. But it's really important that the schools and your parents and you together work together to identify places you'd like to go. I know Fleur is a company I used to work for. They have a tie-up up at Collingwood as a technology school and a technology environment. So that's one way to look at it. But really, I think it's down to you guys. If you see something you want to do, go for it. Send an email, write a letter. If you need help writing a letter or an email, ask your teachers or ask them. I've helped lots of people write emails, letters, and write their CVs to send out to companies. If you ask, they might say no, they might say yes. Sometimes companies haven't got the time to come around and ask if you want a piece of work placement or want to go and spend some time with them. Have a look on the internet and just get out there, push yourself forward. Those are the sort of people that companies want to employ, the ones that are proactive, the ones that want to do a good job, that want to get on, want to learn. So I think my best advice is to get out there and make it happen yourselves.
Thank you.
Our final candidate speaking on this question will be Bob and Roberta Smith.
Yeah, thanks. I think we ought to abolish work experience. I think one of the things it does is that all the kids whose parents have connections, those kids go off and have rather a nice time. And those kids who haven't got so many connections, they go off and have a rotten time working in the supermarket. And I think what we need to do is mix it up a bit. I think we ought to get the kids who don't have so many connections to go and do work experience at the parents who have got lots of connections, so they have a really fantastic time, and get all the kids who have wealthy parents to go and work in the supermarket. And then and the reason why I think we should really think about abolishing it is because what it does is entrenches into children's psyche, into their ideas, that they can only do what their mum and dad do. And actually what I think we ought to do is get kids together and realise that we're all human beings. We share much more than what divides us, and do things. And I think one of the fantastic things that goes on is the Duke of Edinburgh Award, and that encourages kids to meet each other, not to be siloed into different walks of life.
Right, thank you. Now we're going to open up this question for debate. And the way we're going to do this is, anybody who wants to respond to a question needs to put their hand up, any one of the candidates here. We'll then make sure each of the candidates will have a go at the microphone. When either me or Brad asks for the microphone back, the candidate holding it must give it back to us. So is there anybody who wants to start?
I just wanted to pick up on one thing that Louise said about internships limiting to 4 weeks. That would worry me if I was an employer, because it would take somebody about 4 weeks to get up to speed to know the job they're doing. And if after 4 weeks, you're then going to have to either let them go or pay them a wage, but maybe they're not doing a job that could earn a real wage, you're less likely to take somebody on. I think if you had an internship that went on for 3 months or 6 months, you're obviously doing a fairly good job that ought to deserve pay. But I would be very worried that if you were telling companies they had to pay an intern after 4 weeks, about how many companies would actually bother to offer any sort of internship or work placement at all.
I think this is one of the problems. I mean, Paul just identified is how out of touch some parties are, because it's very difficult if you're on a long-term internship to afford. How can you afford to go there? Say perhaps the location is far. What about your food? What about your travel? What guarantee? Why can't you be trained and paid at the same time? I think if it's longer than 4 weeks, which is a month, you should be entitled to be paid at least a minimum wage. The other thing that I forgot to mention, which is very important, is it's giving people the voice, giving the youth a voice rather than always shutting them down, which is why we, the Labour Party, are saying that let's lower the voting age to 16 and 17. Let's lower it. Let's have a program to support that, i.e. an active citizenship program.
Thank you.
Yes, I'd like to echo what Louine said about internships. We would also want to see people being paid after 4 weeks, because otherwise it's basically slave labour. You're working for nothing. How is that right? It's just nonsense. So I would absolutely agree. If you're turning up and doing a day's pay, you deserve to be paid for that. Sorry, doing a day's work, you deserve to be paid for that work. And the only disagreement I would have is that we actually want to introduce a living wage, which would be £10 per hour, and that would be available to everybody regardless of their age. When I started working, which was obviously a long time ago, I think I was on £3 something an hour when I was 16, then I got to 17 and it went up by about 50p an hour. Oh, the excitement. And it gradually went up until I got to 21, and then I was paid something, might be the heady heights of £5 an hour. You could just about cope with it back then.
Thank you. It's taken me back to when I started my nursing, because we used to get £20 a month. £20 a month looking after people. Can you imagine that? But I think that this minimum wage business, when young people go to have their work experience, some of them get exploited. And as somebody said, they've got to travel there, they need a packed lunch and all this carry on. And on top of that, they got to wait a whole month, and then it sort of disinterests them. They don't want to do that kind of work, because if they go to wait a whole month and don't get paid, haven't got any food, can't get there, it doesn't give them any incentive, I don't think.
Yeah, you've got to be very careful with these kinds of work experience and all of that it doesn't entrench privilege. I think that's the essential thing. It doesn't just entrench your view of life. If you do sort of extracurricular activities outside of school, they should be opening up horizons. And so I think that's a really important thing. And I completely agree. The idea of not giving people a minimum wage after 4 weeks is a crazy idea. That is slave labour.
I'd just like to pick up on Bob's point. I can see his concern about work experience entrenching the current social situation, and that obviously is a risk in some areas. But my experience has been that most young people don't necessarily go and have their work experience in the same areas that their parents work. They do often go to something found by the school, or if there's a particular interest they have, they do get it through a friend of the family or some other associate. And in fact, I've known of some places where the school asks that the young person actually goes out and does their work experience in somewhere which doesn't relate to where they want to work, just to find out what the real world of work is like. So if the last thing they want to do is go and work in a shop, they go and work in W.H. Smith's for a week. A relation of mine, in fact, did that a few years ago. So there's all sorts of options around. It's just about getting young people into the workplace, just to give them a flavour and to see what it's like. I would certainly recommend the Duke of Edinburgh, which I've done myself in the past, as an equally good experience as well. But it's all just about building up young people, that all those things come together.
I just want to say, first of all, that I have to disagree with Bob. I don't think that work experience entrenches privilege in any way. I mean, I don't come from a very rich background myself, but when I did my work experience, I did it in a IT shop, and then I went into Parliament and had some work experience there. And it was actually when I had my work experience and I went there, I thought, actually, you know what? I can do this. I can do bigger things. So it actually gave me hope. And I think that's what we want. We want more people having hope, seeing what life is like in other areas, and trying their hand at it. Now, as far as internships are concerned, I think it's a bit strong to say it's like slave labour. I think that businesses have to be able to afford it. That's true, and the way you do that is by making sure businesses are growing and making money, and then they can afford to pay a decent wage to those people. So let's make sure we can deal with that first, and then we can start making sure that interns and lower paid people have rising wages.
Thank you.
Now I think it's time to open up for a question from the audience. So is there anybody in the audience who would like to ask a question to the candidates?
Hi, this is roughly when you were talking about work experience and talking about how important it was for young people, what experience have you had from that? Because I think a lot of politicians can go on and talk about, actually, yes, young people think this, but how do you know? Who have you actually consulted? Because the youth council's a big thing on consulting young people. Who have you consulted and how?
So just to reiterate, that's how the candidates consulted young people in determining their opinions.
Well, the answer to that's quite simple. I've consulted myself because I've been through it. I was a young person, I suppose I still am in some ways, and I went and had work experience. And for the first time, I had opportunities that were never on offer before. I did get to go to, companies which were incredibly exciting. I got to see what they were doing. I got to go to Parliament, as I say, and learn about how that worked. So I've been there, I've lived it, and I believe that it is incredibly important. I want everyone to have the same opportunities. I want all of you to have that opportunity to go to an area you're interested in, see it firsthand, have a crack at the whip, and hopefully pursue your life's goals.
Yes, I'm a youth, but I think the needs of the youth are very different to the needs than it was when I was perhaps 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So what I've done is I've used various other platforms. I've tapped into social media, so in terms of Facebook and Twitter, trying to tap into, see what's trending. Also the traditional door-to-door knocking. So, I'm very active within the constituency, trying to listen to people and see what the issues are. And you're very right in saying, Khadija, the Surrey Youth Council is a very important strategic, focal point for contact, which is why I was very grateful when you were in contact to organize today's event, and very proud to be here and receive such questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
My day job, I'm an artist, but I'm also a professor in a university. And so I work with young people, perhaps a little bit older than yourselves. One of the goals of our university, London Metropolitan University, is widening participation. And that's about getting kids who hadn't thought about being involved in higher education to get them to think, oh, I want to go to university. So I work 2 days a week in this university, working with young people. I know what that's about. I also teach on a programme called John Sorrell's Saturday Clubs, where we get young kids in, some of them about your age, to give them experience of art and give them experience of what it is to study art in an art school. And so I absolutely know and understand what talking to young people is all about, because I am a teacher, actually.
So, Khadija, I can't see you now. Where's she gone? Oh, you're there, you've moved. The policies that I spoke about in my answer about training and so forth, they're actually part of our national Green Party policies. And we actually have a very active Young Greens party, and we have a youth manifesto, and those policies you can find in our youth manifesto. On a personal level, I also when I was at school, we did work experience, and at the time I quite fancied being a forensic pathologist because I'd seen something on TV, and my school organised me to have a week in a path lab at the local hospital, testing blood samples and other samples that I won't go into. And it was fabulous. Really enjoyed it and decided that perhaps wasn't the career for me. I also work in a school. I'm actually a school librarian. So I spend a lot of time, it's a primary school. So most of the children obviously younger than you guys. But I spend a lot of time talking to the children about their hopes and aspirations. And my time's up, sorry.
I've got great concerns, I fear, because all we keep talking about is children going to university. Have we forgotten the children that haven't got the capability, children with learning needs? Nobody is mentioning that. We've got to remember that everybody cannot go to university. I haven't been to university. Have you been to university?
Yes, I have.
Thank the Lord. But there's lots of people cannot go to university, and that got to be addressed. Because you don't know how these children are feeling. Because I keep thinking this university, there might be a few of the girls and boys here. There might be a few girls and boys here who are able to go to university. So we got to think about that when we, talking about all the other things that we want them to do. Art might be good for them because they probably don't have to, study, just draw.
I think art would be good for you. Why don't you come to London Metropolitan University? Well, I'll take you on.
From that?
I think
Sorry.
Thank you. To bring it back to work experience, which I think was the question, and how we knew about young people's views on that. I've got a young person in my household. My daughter's done work experience in the last couple of years. I've also, as I mentioned in my original reply, been in a business where I've had young people in doing work experience and talked to them about that and seen the value they get out of that. In a previous election campaign, we actually had working with us on the campaign some young people, probably around the sort of 16, 17 mark, who we actually set up a programme because they were studying politics and they wanted to have experience of running an election campaign, being involved in it, and we got them involved in that process, involved in setting up websites, social media, online experience, but also the experience of delivering leaflets and canvassing. So right across the board experience to ask young people, engage with young people and get their views.
Thanks. Like the other candidates, my daughter's just turned 19, so I've been spending a lot of time trying to help her through school, getting work experience as a teaching assistant for a couple of weeks, and then she went to work at the Yvonne Arnaud Theatre in Guildford. She's interested in theatre, so we got her some experience there. I've also helped a few of her friends, as I said before, writing letters, writing CVs, sending emails. So that's the kind of experience I've got, and obviously myself. I spent a few summers delivering newspapers, clearing gardens, working in shops, working in print rooms, all that good stuff. So lots of people, lots of experience of how people want to go and get some good work experience.
I think we're going to have to move on to the next question now.
From now on, to save time, we'll be cutting down the time candidates can answer to 30 seconds.
Can we speed talk?
Our next question will be involving public transport. At the moment, well, one complaint we've heard is that bus fares start charging adult fees when you're 16. Now, when you're 16, you're not an adult. So how come buses can charge more when you're 16 and 17, when you're not an adult? And also rail fares. We want to hear what your party are going to do to tackle rising rail fares in this election. Right, first of all, we're going to hear from Paul Chapman of UKIP.
Okay, the bus services are run by the county council, and so they're in charge of buses, routes, and the amount of subsidy that the bus services get, and so they determine the prices for buses and the age at which you have to pay. Most bus services don't run particularly profitably, and so I guess that's why they choose to charge at 16 and 17. I tend to agree, actually, that most people, when they're 16, 17, are still at school, still studying, still trying to work hard. So I do think that it's a bit unfair that they should be charged full adult fare at 16, 17.
So next we'll hear from the Liberal Democrats.
Yes, bus services are very expensive. The Liberal Democrats have a proposal to give young people of 16 and 17 and older a discount of 2/3 on bus fares. So that would make it much more cost effective. And I think it's very important, given that now young people have to stay in education or some sort of training. They don't really have an option to go out and get a full-time paid job at 16 or 17. So it is a very expensive option for them. We'd also like to see more bus services available so that it kept some of the cars off the road, allow people to have a nice, fast, efficient service for local journeys, but also provided a better means of getting around for young people when they're not able to drive, so they've got more freedom and don't have to rely on their parents all the time to take them around.
Thank you.
Next will be Bob and Roberta Smith.
Oh, yeah, well, you won't remember at all the idea that public transport could be cheap. When I was a kid, it was quite cheap because there was an idea that you would have a bit of private enterprise involved. That's a really good thing, but you'd also have some public money involved in it, and that would make things affordable. People could move around. There was an amazing project in London at one stage. It was called Fares Fair by a man called Ken Livingstone. His idea that he would try and make, it failed, but it was an idea that he would try and make London transport free. I think we need to put public money into transport and bring the fares down so people can travel around a bit.
Thank you.
Next we'll hear from the Green Party.
Thank you. Public transport is a key part of our policies because, as Anne-Marie said, we need to get cars off the road. We've got to stop burning so many fossil fuels. Our air is filthy and people are dying in this country from air pollution, which if you study Dickens, that's kind of how it feels. So we want to make buses free to anybody who is under 18 or in full-time education. We want to make them reliable as well. I know in your survey, 50% of people said they're always late. And we also want to cut rail fares by 10% immediately and renationalise our rail service to make it efficient and better.
I agree with Kimberly.
Next will be the Liberal Democrat Party.
Next we'll have Labour.
Yeah, I think it's just unacceptable with such high fees that this, the youth are having to pay out for. It's just unacceptable, particularly if they're not employed. I mean, there's so many challenges facing the youth. You've got the fare of a bus or train to worry about. You've got the challenge of finding employment, the challenge of finding work experience, security. So these need to be revised. But within Surrey Heath, the experience that I've got when I've been speaking to people at the doors is another problem, in addition to high fares, which I agree is totally wrong, is the reliability of such services. So not only are you paying a high fare, but the service is not reliable because buses come and apparently I'm told some areas every half an hour, and sometimes the bus doesn't even stop. And in addition to that, it's not even a comfortable journey because of all the cracks that there are on the roads. I always joke that we're the party of the left, but it doesn't mean we have to drive on what's left in Surrey Heath.
Next we have the Conservative Party.
I completely agree that there is a problem with this, but you can't just solve it by saying, right, we're going to fix prices, that's going to solve it all. You've got to be realistic, which is why the government is going to, if it's led by David Cameron after the election, consult with railway companies and others to try and make sure the prices can be kept low. Also, what we're going to do is invest in infrastructure to try and make sure that there's not so high maintenance costs, and we can bring it down that way. And the other thing is just talk to people. Surrey has been consulting people all across the county on what the problems are with transport, in particular buses, and we should keep that conversation going.
Thank you. Next will be Paul Chapman for UKIP. Have you already spoken? Oh, sorry. Right. And next will be the Christian Party.
I even forgot what you all were talking about, but never mind. The bus fares. The bus fares, I think what they need to do is children who are still living at home, people who've on benefits and all of that should be exempt from paying. Because if you haven't got money to live on, Where's the children going to get money from to pay the bus and pay the train fare? If the people is on benefits, then the children should travel free. That's it.
Thank you.
So has everyone spoken? So we'll move on to the next question, which is about discrimination. We're mainly looking at age here because we feel as young people we aren't consulted as much as we should be. So how would you, if you were put into power, would consult with young people? So we start with the Labour Party.
Thank you. Of course, we've got the Equality Act, and it's against the law to discriminate against someone's age in terms of, for example, if you were to employ somebody. But that's not to say it doesn't happen. So, of course, we need to have systems in place to make sure it doesn't happen. In terms of consultation, of course, it's the same channels that are in place. You know, you've got tribunals, you can see data. I mean, you know, if one was discriminated against, there should be support available to challenge such discrimination because it has no place in today's society. But it goes back down to, very quickly, you need to get young people the ability to vote, particularly at 16 and 17, because you are the future and you determine the change.
Thank you.
The next speaker will be the Conservative Party.
I think that you've got to keep a conversation going with young people. I think we should actually look at the possibility of lowering the voting age to 16. I mean, we haven't enshrined that in law, but we have actually made it happen in Scotland in the last year's independence referendum. We saw that had a lot of young people getting engaged in a really sensible, mature way. And one of the things that we've said is that we will have a conversation about it in the next parliament if we're elected. So we're definitely looking at it, we want to engage, and we want more young people to be involved.
Thank you. We'll go to the Christian Party.
If you want the children to be allowed to vote from age 16, that means they've got to have this part in the curriculum. They need to know what voting entails. So they can't just be given it's age 16 to go and vote if they don't know anything what they're voting for. So will that be included in the curriculum? Thank you.
Thank you. The next candidate will be Bob and Roberta Smith.
Well, my whole shtick is that children are being discriminated absolutely every day by not having their voices developed, by being engaged with the arts. If you teach kids art, if you get you lot around and then make a drawing of something, you actually create as many different perspectives on that drawing as there are kids in the class. And actually the arts develop your voice. Without the arts, your voice is not developed, and we won't be hearing from you as angry adults later on. So please think about the arts as a serious voice-giving thing.
Thank you.
Next we'll move on to the UKIP Party.
I guess we're all in fairly sort of broad agreement here. Certainly the political groups themselves all have young branches, as young Conservatives, Lib Dems, Labour, UKIP and so on, that you can get involved with. Groups like this that you're setting up at the moment are fantastic and do a good way of getting your voice across and getting it heard. It'll be good if the locally elected officials came along to meetings like this. Obviously Michael's not here today, but there are other opportunities to meet local borough and county councillors at different times. Come and talk to them. And I hope the schools can try and do more as well to educate and get you to know how the system works and how to get in contact with people.
Thank you.
The next candidate speaking will be Kimberly Lawson of the Green Party.
Thank you. So I absolutely agree. If you're 16 years old, you should be able to vote. If you're 16 and 17 here tonight, if we don't have another general election for 5 years, when you guys are in 5 years' time, you're going to be 21, 21, 22. You could have thousands of pounds worth of tuition fee debt to pay off. You might not be able to find somewhere to live. You might not be able to find a well-paid job. These are the issues that are affecting your lives and your futures right now, and you should absolutely have a say on those issues.
Thank you.
So we go to the Liberal Democrats.
Just going to add to the votes at 16 is Liberal Democrat policy, so we're fully in favour of that as well. I think it's all about having conversations with young people at every opportunity. I've participated in several occasions on speed dating or speed debating with young people at the local one of the local high schools near where I live, which means that young people get to come along, put questions about the local area to counsellors and get their views on that. I think online is also another good way to engage young people and get their views. So.
Thank you. So we'll open up to a debate now.
Does anybody wish to start?
I think I'd like to know what young people think, actually. Some views from the audience.
Should we get some views from the audience? Does anybody want to share their view?
I'd just like to ask what comes first, party policies towards young people or us voting for you?
It's a very good question. Sorry, what was your name? Jordan. Jordan. It's a very good question, Jordan. So the thing is, I mean, every party has their own values. So it's a set. So we're here representing values. In terms of Labour, I'm, representing fairness, equal opportunity, and social justice across the board. So when I ask you to vote Labour, that's the values that I'm standing for, and I hope so. You're ultimately voting for the values, and of course, on the candidate itself representing those values.
Thank you.
Thank you. With the Liberal Democrats, our policy making is all very democratic. So it's done by local members meeting, and then that goes then to the annual conference. And we're quite unusual amongst the main political parties in that our annual conference actually makes the policy, and that would include involving the Liberal youth, who often will put motions to the party conference. So their views are very much considered and taken on board. I think that's very important to get the views from all sorts of different groups in society to get policies made.
We also make policy at our conference, and anybody can come, if they're a member of the Green Party, anybody can come and propose policy and it's debated. But I'd also say that the Green Party has been around for decades and we've been consistent in what we've said. Political parties, some of the other parties, will come along and in the run-up to an election, they'll make you all kinds of promises. This is what we're going to do for the next 5 years. And they're actually only thinking ahead the next 5 years. What's the popular thing at the moment that's going to get them in? We've been consistent for 30 years, so you can judge us on our track record.
Thank you. Does anybody want to respond to that?
That was such a controversial view. The light fitting.
I was just going to say, just to, while I get distracted by that, I was just going to say, really, the party should consult on what the people want, what it is that you're looking for. And if we don't listen and somebody else does, then you go vote for them. If you come and talk to a party and they listen to what you have to say, then hopefully you would come and vote for us. So, yeah, absolutely, we should canvass the opinions and get the opinions of people and make sure that we work for you, because that's what MPs do.
Sorry, Oliver Lewis. Yeah. I mean, in the Conservative Party, what we do, we're always having conversations at local level and passing our ideas up to central office. So we're all involved in making policy in that way. But at the end of the day, your vote is what decides what happens. We have to answer to you. If we have mad, bad and dangerous ideas, you just don't vote for us. So this is the great thing about this country. It's at the end of the day, you are the boss. We answer to you. This is basically a job interview as far as I'm concerned.
I think you're right to be suspicious of political parties and their youth policies, because obviously they're trying to attract you in to their brand. But it's important to get engaged in politics. And actually in this election, what's very interesting, there are all sorts of other people outside of the political parties who are trying to get you to think about their issues. For instance, there's a wonderful RSPB campaign called Vote Bob for Nature. It's nothing to do with me. If you go online, it's a squirrel. And the idea is to get you, if you're interested in wildlife, that you think about the policies that those parties have about wildlife. Another one is this NHS campaign to get you to think about the NHS. Brian May is trying to get you to think about wildlife again. So that's quite an interesting way of engaging people, which is a novel thing in this election. So don't be too suspicious of politicians.
Now, does anybody else want to make another comment?
To answer the young man's question, the question was, do I want you to vote for me, or do I want to find out what your needs are?
Basically,
Yeah, I thought that's what you asked. And I think that in school, the students, pupils, university graduates, whatever, should be encouraged to contact the political parties with your views, what you want, so that when we're doing our manifesto and all of these things that we write in leaflets and what have you, we know what your needs are so it can be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Now for our next question.
Yes, at the back.
Just regarding linking in the bus prices to discrimination, essentially a vote is our voice, what we want to be heard, and the voting age isn't at 18 yet, but we do have, I guess, groups and organisations such as the Youth Council, and an issue that we heard was that bus prices were too high. And as the Conservative Party said, you're hoping in the next election you'll talk to bus companies and train whoever's in charge of the train prices. But the thing is, we've identified that as a problem and it hasn't been addressed. We were essentially told that the bus prices are too high and there's nothing they could do about that. Yet bus companies, they don't need to legally publish their annual income. How is that fair? How do we know where that profit's going to? We don't. That's the answer. And the other day I actually saw that on the bus they told us that we can't we can't make passes for young people because we can't afford that. That's what we were told by the bus companies. Yet I saw on the bus the other day, actually for old and retired people, there's now a free bus pass for them. So why is our voice being ignored? And if bus companies aren't listening, then what are you going to do about it?
Well, I think first thing I should say is that I agree with you, there is a problem, and no one's going to try and disguise that. Now, you just can't solve problems overnight. I could say, well, if you vote for me, boom, it's all sorted, I promise you, honest gov. You know, it doesn't work like that. But we can do is we can say, look, what are the big problems with this? You can look at things like infrastructure, as I say, investing to make sure that we can repair the damage that has been done in certain areas so we can address the problems. But I think that the broader point is that we are listening to your voices, we are consulting with you, and we will take action in the next Parliament when we've addressed the problems.
Can I speak? Just to mention what I said in my original statement on this question was that the Liberal Democrats do have in our manifesto, we've recognised this problem and we've said that we will give a 2/3 discount on bus fares to young people.
I would say your democratic voice is really important. You need to continue that forward and organise and put a lot of pressure on the politicians about that. You're doing that now and it makes them sweat. And that's a really good thing, make them sweat. I'm trying to make Michael Gove sweat about the arts. You should have the bus party. In fact, there was a great democratic movement led by Rosa Parks, which was getting black people the vote in America over discrimination on buses. It was about the price of the bus, but it was to do with those same issues. It was about your organisation. It's a really good thing you're saying.
Right, thank you. The next question we're going to ask the candidates is about safety at night. We want to know, how will candidates make sure that Surrey Heath is a safe place to go around at night? Just discussing with the council, we identified some areas in Surrey Heath where we wouldn't want to be at night. So how will the candidates support development in Surrey Heath to make it a safer place? Now, the first candidate to answer this question will be Paul Chapman for UKIP.
Thanks. Yeah, that's a good question. I guess that the danger spots obviously need to be highlighted and passed on to the council. The local borough council will be in charge of that sort of thing. There are police patrols that can be arranged. There are volunteer groups that do patrols through the town centre on a Camberley on a Saturday, Friday night. They go out and patrol and try and keep people safe. I guess it's a question of juggling finance and trying to find the money to keep the street lights on for longer and later. So again, you should petition your local borough councillors and get them to take up your cause. That's what borough councillors are there to do, which you'll be electing, or your parents will be electing next week.
Thank you. We'll go to the Christian Party now.
I came across, I think it's a recording. They were talking about safety at night, and it was to do with the trains and the fact that in Ascot, when the trains get there, they've got to change from one platform to the other if they're going towards London Waterloo. And a couple of elderly ladies is very concerned that the lights do not work. So it's all right having lights and infrastructure and this, that, and the other, but it's got to be fit for purpose. The bulbs have got to be changed, it's got to be maintained, and everything is working. And we, of course, we've got to thank the street angels as well. That goes around to help people.
Right, thank you. The next candidate speaking will be Louise Natroshi of the Labour Party.
Thank you. So nationally, of course, you need frontline policing, which unfortunately the Conservative Party want to cut. If you don't have a visible presence within your communities, then undoubtedly research has shown that crime will increase. So we want to increase and preserve our frontline policing, which is one of the things that will deter crime. Also, neighbourhood watch, the traditional neighbourhood watch, making sure that it's active and in tune with the local, the local police, and also ensuring that that we have controls in place to have CCTV within, as appropriate within limits. But also don't forget that you need people to man the CCTV. So, these things need to be thought through, and there needs to be a system in place which, again, put pressure on your local councillors as well. And nationally, that's our position.
Thank you. We'll go to the Conservatives now.
The answer is have more police officers, because actually over the last 5 years, I'm afraid to say, Louis, actually the number of police officers has increased from the 1800s into the 1900s. So, we have got more officers on the beat going around, and I think that's a very important aspect. The other thing you've got to do is actually talk to your police officers. I know that people in my local area who were concerned about crime, I went to talk to the police and they changed their patrols, so they did actually cover those roads more. And I should also point out that over the last 5 years, we've seen crime drop to some of its lowest ever levels.
Thank you.
Next will be Bob and Roberta Smith.
Well, I think probably echo what other people are saying about the police service. But the other thing to remember, and I think it is an important thing to remember, is that, I actually don't live in this neighbourhood. I live in East London, which some people would think is a kind of crime hotspot. I've also lived in New York, which people think is really frightening. And actually, sometimes that fear is a fear that exists in your imagination, folks. And it's an important thing not to live your life by thinking if only we covered the place in more CCTV cameras, we'd all be safe. You would just be more surveyed and the state would know where you were. And so it's quite important just to think, to be sensible about it. More police is a good idea, but also we don't want to cover the place in lots of night lighting, because that's very bad for the environment.
Thank you.
We'll go to the Liberal Democrats.
Crime and obviously being out at night and after dark is obviously a really real fear for young people, but we do live here in the safest borough, in the safest county in the country, so it does need to be put into perspective. What I've noticed is I've been to several events. I went to the Neighbourhood Watch event a couple of months ago in the area, and of course all the people that were there tended to be of a certain age. They were mainly older than me, so they were particularly old. Maybe it would be a good idea to get involved with someone like Neighbourhood Watch and perhaps send a representative from the Youth Council along so you can give them young people's issues. And there's also police panels as well, which I think have fallen into disuse in this area, but they're a good way of raising local issues.
Thank you.
And next will be Kimberly Lawson for the Green Party.
I agree with a lot of what's been said, particularly Bob, who I've said before should join the Green Party. One thing I want to highlight is that walking and cycling are very good, very healthy ways to get around, and we will introduce all kinds of new cycle paths and footpaths to encourage walking and cycling. And I think if you can get around easily and safely, then you'll feel more confident, because even if you are in a safe neighbourhood, sometimes at night when it's dark, it can still feel a little bit scary sometimes.
Thank you. That was the last question.
So now we're going to have the closing statements for each candidate.
Right, now to make this quick, because we're going over time, each candidate is going to have 10 seconds to make their closing statement. And to make sure no candidate claims longer, I'm going to stand up and hold the microphone in front of the candidates. So they only have 10 seconds. Right. Who shall we have first? Let's have the Liberal Democrat candidates first. So 10 seconds for your last closing statement.
Liberal Democrats are for education, environment and equality. We're the party for young people.
Thank you. Next, Bob and Roberta Smith.
Left, right and centre, all people are worried about art education. Art is an election issue. Vote for Bob for more art. Art is about your freedom of speech. And my final question to you is, are you Bob-tomistic?
Thank you. The next closing statement will be from the Labour Party.
Do not let age be a barrier. Always continue doing what you're doing today. Be active. I represent equal opportunities, fairness and social justice for all. Vote Labour and support Labour at any age. Thank you.
Thank you. The next closing statement will be from the Christian Party.
Vote Christian Party. I'm interested in helping social care and carers looking after their loved ones. And my interest, there's lots of young people who are also carers looking after disabled mums and dads. So I will make sure that they get the optimum support. Thank you.
The next closing statement will be from Oliver Lewis of the Conservatives.
Thank you all for coming. You've been absolutely brilliant. And please, please stay involved. Get involved either with the Conservatives, I hope, or one of the other parties. We've all got interesting ideas. And please do consider voting Conservative in the future.
The next closing statement will be from Kimberly Lawson of the Green Party.
We are the party for young people because we will scrap tuition fees, we will cancel all existing student debt, we will provide you with jobs, we will provide you with somewhere to live, and we will save the environment.
And is that everybody that I've asked? Or yes, finally UKIP. Thank you.
I just think it's fantastic what you're doing here. I encourage you to stay involved with politics at a local level, get involved, and most importantly, vote. Don't necessarily for me or one of these, just make sure you use your vote when you get to that level and keep using it. That's the most important thing.
Right, thank you from all the candidates and thank you for coming this evening. I think that's it.
We have a round of applause for the candidates.
Hi again. Can I just really echo what Jonathan said? Thank you not only to the candidates, but for all of you for actually coming here and being so participating. Thank you to our media, amazing people. And generally, thank you. Round of applause for all of you, really.
Well done.